Okay, we're just about done here. One last thing I'm going to do. A lot of people might disagree. I'm going to put some anti-seize compound on the wheel lug studs. Just to prevent it from being difficult to remove the lug nuts, particularly if you have a flat tire on the side of the road. The other thing we can do here is you can put a little bit of anti-seize compound right on this surface here where the wheel meets the hub, and that will prevent, or theoretically should prevent, the wheel from being stuck on there again. So that'll take care of that. Okay, I'm skipping ahead to the other side again here, and I got the car pretty well assembled here, and at this point I'm going to step on the brakes, and that should make that level of brake fluid in the master cylinder go down to the correct level. So just step on the brakes here. There we go. Brake pedal feels hard now. Now let's take a look at that master cylinder and see, check out the level there. Look at that. It's just about exactly where it's supposed to be. So that worked out pretty good. Now we'll put this little doodad in here. What this probably is a thing to prevent it from splashing. There is a vent hole in the cap, and it's probably to keep the brake fluid from splashing up into the vent hole. So there we go. That's taken care of there. Brake fluid is at the exact right level. We put the cap to our master cylinder back on. I just can't stress enough to make sure you come up with some way of remembering to do that. Now, all that's left is putting the wheel back on and taking it for a test drive. I think it's a good idea to get that wheel pretty much where it should be and screw these in by hand just to make sure that wheel's seated well before you go nuts with an air wrench. Because you want to have that wheel seated properly. It needs to be on the hub squarely, or you'll have all kinds of problems. As you noticed, I didn't even try to get those nuts tight right away because I wanted to make sure the wheel was on there properly. Now at this point, we can tighten them up. Okay. Now we will put the car, I'll do the other side, and we'll get the car all put back together, and we'll take her for a test drive. And after the test drive, we will check the torque on these wheel nuts one more time. Now let's take our car for a test drive. Now the most important thing I can say here is whenever you're doing any type of brake work, okay, before you put that car in gear, pump your brake pedal up until it feels nice and hard the way it's supposed to. Now we already did this to get that master cylinder fluid level down, but if you hadn't had to do anything like that and you haven't stepped on your brake pedal, make sure you do so, okay? Okay, because you want to get your brake pedal hard and your brakes functioning, because if you haven't pumped up them brakes, when you first step on the brake pedal, the car's not going to stop. The pedal's going to go all the floor and the car's not going to stop. Now, if you had the wherewithal to know exactly what's going on, you could probably quick pump up the brake pedal and be okay, but chances are you'll just panic and freak out when that brake pedal goes down to the floor. And when you're backing out of a garage, it'd be very easy to hit the side of the garage. Or if there's any car behind you, it'd be very easy to hit that. That's why I just can't recommend enough. Pump up those brakes before you put the car in gear. Let's take her for a drive here and see if it brakes, if the braking capability of the car is proper, and make sure it doesn't make any funny noises. Make sure it doesn't pull to one side or another during braking. And the other thing is we're going to make sure that our brake calipers are not stuck. Chances are in this car they're not. Everything was nice and clean on this car. It wasn't very rusty. But I'm still going to show you what I do in the event of working on some car that, like, let's say you were fixing a 1978 pickup truck that no one had ever taken care of and everything was all rusty and cruddy. This is how I check to make sure the brake calipers aren't sticking. The first thing I do is I'll take her for a drive, and I'm not going to use the brakes very much here, okay? Just to stop at stop signs, and I'm going to come very slowly to the stop signs. What I want to do is put a few miles on this car, about 5 miles or so, and then we will reach out and touch the wheels. And if they're not warm or they're not hot, if you did any amount of braking at all, they'll get warm. But if they're not hot, then chances are your calipers aren't sticking. The older and crummier car you're working on, the longer it's going to take for you to have confidence that the calipers aren't sticking. But this is a good way to do it. Like I say, your only other choice is to just put on new or rebuild your calipers right off the bat. That just isn't something I want to do unless I have to. So we're kind of driving this car at a nice, easy pace. We're coming up to a stop sign, and I'm pretty much going to let her roll to a stop here. I'm not going to use the brakes very hard. The next stretch of road will be driving about 2 miles or so, and I'll get out and I'll check to see how those brakes feel with the temperature of them. If the wheels are nice and cool and everything, we can consider everything to be okay. When you're going on a test drive, you just make sure the car doesn't have any funny noises. It doesn't pull one side or the other. We're doing all those things right now in the first half of the test drive without actually using the brakes very much. And then I'll check the temperature of them. And on the way back, then I'll use the brakes a little more aggressively and just make sure that everything's okay there. And if everything looks okay, at that point we can consider this job done. Okay, we've driven about 5 miles, and I have not been using the brakes aggressively at all. And now I'm going to feel the wheels, and they don't feel even the least bit warm. Going to touch a little bit of the caliper. That doesn't feel warm. Now I got enough confidence where I can touch the brake rotor, and the brake rotor isn't warm, so that side's okay. Now we'll do the same thing on the other side. Okay. Everything seems fine. Nothing seems warm at all. Okay. So now we'll drive her back, and we'll be a little bit more aggressive with the brakes. I'm not going to touch the rotor itself next time I check them, but I'll touch the wheel and the cast iron part of the caliper. And if they don't seem like they're hot, we'll call this good. And then the only last thing we have to do is retorque our lug nuts. Okay, we're driving our car now. Now we're going to try and test our brakes a little bit. Make sure she doesn't pull from one side to the other. One word of warning here, though. When you're doing something like this, you know, how everything's working on your car is going to be probably foremost on your mind. But remember, the public highways are not your own personal test track. So when you go out and try, I'll try seeing how well the brakes perform. You know, you slam on the brakes, you know, on the road without looking in the rear view mirror, you know, someone's probably going to rear end you. So you want to be aware that, you know, you're still driving on public roads, and your main concern is the safety of others. How your car is performing is secondary. But okay, so we don't have anybody in our rear view mirror at all here, and there's no one on this road at all. So I gotta hit the brakes kind of hard. Hit them pretty hard there. Didn't even have my hands on the wheel. It seemed to work pretty good. We'll get her up to speed again, and we'll stop fairly hard at this next stop sign here. Of course, making sure that there's no cars behind us while we do it. You really don't even want to have a car in front of you. You know, a guy could freak out if he sees you coming to an abrupt stop and wonder why you're doing it. So, like I say, be just as aware of everything going on around you as if you're just driving your car. Don't let your concerns about how things went on your repair override your responsibility to look out for everybody on the highway. Okay, so we're coming up to a stop sign here. So I guess I'm gonna, before I actually get to the stop sign, I think one more time I'm gonna hit the brakes pretty hard. And what I'm doing is I'm checking to make sure the car doesn't pull. You know, it pulls very, very slightly to the left, but a lot of times that has to do with the crown of the road. I was pretty much on the center. We'll stop her again here, roll off to the right side, and now she wants to pull to the right a little bit. So that's pretty much due to the crown of the road. So I have pretty good confidence that everything is a-okay on this car. And like I say, we're using the brakes relatively hard here. I'm not actually making it so the anti-lock brakes are kicking in. I suppose you could, but just some hard stops you might be in a semi-panic stop mode. That's kind of what I'm imitating. Everything seems to be working just fine. So I'll do a couple more fairly hard brakes in this car, make sure everything sounds good and make sure nothing's pulling, and then we'll check to see how hot the brakes are when we get home. And if they're not super hot, we'll consider everything good. Like I say, you know, you don't want to go too nuts on testing out these brakes if you're also worried about the calipers sticking, because everything will get hot just from your braking. So you got to bear that in mind. These brakes are going to be warmer when we check them once we get back home than they were the first time we checked them after that short test drive. Okay, we're back home now after we did some amount of braking, and we'll feel the wheels, and the wheels don't even feel warm at all, which is good. I'll touch the caliper itself. That doesn't feel the slightest bit of warmth. If you have enough guts, you can touch the rotor. That does feel a little warm, as it should. And so everything looks like it's okay there. We'll check the other side. Touch our wheel, doesn't feel warm at all. Touch the iron part of the caliper, that feels good. And if you have enough guts, you can touch that rotor, and it feels just a little bit warm, not too bad. You wouldn't want to hold your finger on it for a long time, but I think we could be fairly confident that the calipers are not sticking. Now, the only other thing we have to do is retorque these wheel nuts one more time. Now, they say you should do that after you have driven about 25 miles, and they say, because they say that you know, if they weren't tightened properly, you know, they can loosen up. So, but I think the main reason to do it is a lot of times, especially if you don't do these kind of things quite, you know, all that often, you're so excited to get the job done, and you're so proud of yourself that you did the brake job, that you might get your lug nuts on finger tight, and for whatever reason you can't get to the air wrench right away, or what have you, and then you might forget about it, you know. So you might forget to torque your wheels to the right spec to begin with. So that is why it's a good idea to check that wheel torque after about 25 miles. Not only because the chance of, well, maybe for some reason they loosened up, but also, you know, there is a chance that you forgot to tighten them up to begin with, and you certainly wouldn't want to have your wheel come off. So that's all we have for this job. If you liked what you saw, I appreciate it if you liked, shared, subscribed, you know, do all it takes to make this the #1 channel on YouTube. If you have any comments or criticisms, put them in the comments section below. And until next time, we'll see you here on the Fix Yourself channel.